This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Latirzo, former writer, full-time observer, mostly, joined by 6-term Boxing Writers Association of America, Jack Hirsch. Jack, you know what? I'm getting a little tired.
President, that's the thing. Yeah, you're
President, right.
Frank.
Jack, of this Jack Hirsch, New York Golden Gloves. I was a 4-time finalist, Jack. 4-time finalist in the Open Golden Gloves.
I had nothing to do with that intro. I mean, we can reassess. I mean, we could redo it if you want.
That's okay. Now, look, the people that watch this show know that we talk a little football in the beginning. So Jack, in his little sneaky, cunning ways, has been trying to jab me about the Miami Dolphins being the hottest team in the NFL. The Miami Dolphins have defeated the teams they've defeated, Jack, have a record of 28 wins and 63 losses. They are 1-5 against teams they played over 500 this year, and they've been outscored 137 to 110. The Miami Dolphins just invent new ways to finish 500, and this is another one of their years. The only bragging rights I have is they have pounded your Jets twice.
The last month, there hasn't been a better team in the NFL than the Miami Dolphins. They're 4-0 during that time, but they slipped under the radar because they got off to such a bad start. So congratulations to you, Frank.
Jack, they play a team with a winning record this week, so that streak comes to an end. They play at the Steelers in the cold. That streak will come to an end. Hello, Joe Bergman. I guess you're all pumped up about the Beagles tonight, or I should say the Vultures. Yes, Jack, who do you like in that game? I think the Vultures win.
I think, well, they're playing the LA Chargers in LA. There's no home field advantage for the Chargers. The fans in LA seem to be a little indifferent. So I'll go with the Eagles in a close one, 23-20.
And to finish up on this, do you have a hard time with Notre Dame not making the college football playoff?
I do. I do. I think they should have gotten in instead of Alabama. I don't want to hear about Alabama playing the extra game. They got pounded in the extra game. Like
but they also beat that team earlier at Georgia.
The extra game. Yeah, against Georgia. I don't care extra game what. The point is they played the extra game. It's not a free pass, the extra game, but the committee turned it into a free pass.
And Notre Dame played two good teams all year, Jack. One home, one away, and they lost both games. Notre Dame has no argument at all. Anyhow, I guess we're going to talk some boxing. There's a couple anniversaries. There's some news. Where do you want to start, Jack? You want to start with Crawford?
With the Boxing Hall of Fame over here, I'm going to go over certain of the key positions, people who got in. I'll talk about a few of them. I'll go over everyone. The class of 2026 was announced a few years ago. For those who are eligible, Triple G got in, Gennady Golovkin. And he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, deservedly so. Antonio Tarver got in. He's been on the ballot a good number of years. But this was a year where he was finally able to break through. Nigel Benn got in. Nothing against Nigel Benn getting in, but it's interesting that Chris Eubank did not get in, but Nigel Benn did. And somehow the two of them are linked together. And if Nigel Benn was to get in, you'd think Chris Eubank would get in as well. Personally, I think Chris Eubank had a marginally better career than Nigel Benn. Plus, in their two fights, Eubank stopped him once. The second one was a draw. It was a close fight. I actually think Ben edged that fight out. But it was
I agree, Jack.
Naoki Fujioka got in, in the men, and Jackie Knapp in the women's, category. Cutman Russ Anber got in. People don't know Russ Anber by name, but they know his face, seeing him constantly in the corner. But they wouldn't know him by name. Referee, who you're pretty familiar with, Frank Cappuccino got in posthumously, refed a lot of big fights. Another guy you're extremely familiar with, trainer Cutman Jimmy Glenn, got in as well. Jimmy Glenn really didn't train, a lot of high-profile guys, but Jimmy Glenn was involved with a lot of them, in a very low-level capacity. But he was considered a great guy around town, the nicest guy in boxing and very involved. And I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to get in, but it's not like a Georgie Benton type trainer who made his name.
Alex Wallow got in as an observer.
Yeah. I'll go up next. Dr. Flip Hermansky got in, from Las Vegas there, the non-participant category. Journalist Kevin Iole got in. He's written on a high level about boxing for a good number of years. And Alex Wallow got in. It's a shame the timing because he just passed away recently before it was announced. And in the observer category, I'm not familiar with Jimmy Clabby, who had gotten in. So that was, posthumously. And who didn't get in? Kelly Swanson didn't get in, the publicist, and good riddance to Kelly Swanson not getting in, because if you look at all the other publicists like a Bill Kaplan, she's superior to Bill Kaplan to get in. We talked about in the past show, so I want to close the book on Kelly Swanson. Her personality in dealing with people worked against her, and that happens in all sports, Frank. I mean,
I wish I had a vote, Jack, because I would have voted for her twice.
Right, which is fine, Frank. You don't go to the fights much. You're not involved on the inside.
I'm only kidding.
I know
kidding.
you are, but if you're involved on the inside, you'd hear the scuttlebutt.
I did have a couple dealings with her, Jack, and you know what? My dealings were okay, but we're talking 25 years ago.
Frank, I could have unlimited, which is fine. Okay, that's good. But I'm just saying, you take certain publicists like a Bill Kaplan, who's in the Hall of Fame. And I'm not saying Bill shouldn't be in there, but Kelly Swanson has had a greater career in boxing than Bill Kaplan. She deserves to get in comparison to some other PR people who are in the Hall of Fame, because she's done enough, but somehow when you act towards people a certain way and they really don't like your personality, that's what happens. Is she a bad person? No, she's not a bad person by any means. She's just not a good people person. She's not a good people person. That's all there is to it. And that's just my opinion and the opinion of many others.
Right.
And if you need any evidence there, it's the fact that she didn't get voted in, and she has the credentials to be in. So what can I say? But at some point, I would think she would get in. I would think so, and I'm fine with it because, like I said, she deserves it. Even though personally, she's not a favorite of mine by any means.
Well, you know what, Jack? How you treat people. Look, there's merit, but you know what? How you treat people says a lot about you. And I don't know anyone who couldn't improve in that area, myself included. But that does mean something. And it's just so much easier to be nice. It just does. And sometimes even I have a hard time with that. Sometimes when I'm debating or whatever. But it's like somebody that is their livelihood and that's their business. I guess she just feels that the people that she has to be in contact with, like writers and fighters, they need her more than she needs them. And it's like, that's how you judge who people are. When you're nice to people that can't do anything for you, that says who you are.
Yeah. There's different elements to that. But the point is, I kind of want to close the book on it. She didn't get in, and she certainly had... her credentials are greater than Bill Kaplan's if you're going to go 1-to-1 as far as who's done more in the business. And Bill Kaplan's deserving of getting in. So if he hears this, I'm not saying Bill shouldn't get in. It's like you could compare Hall of Famers in any sport. Gennady Golovkin got in. But if I tell you, well, he's not as deserving as Marvin Hagler to be a Hall of Famer, it doesn't diminish Gennady Golovkin. It doesn't mean I don't think he belongs in. And what I
Well, let's break that down, Jack. I agree with you. If there was only one spot, and Golovkin and Hagler were the only two I had to pick from, Hagler would obviously get the nod. But why? Is it because he's a better fighter?
I think he
did he accomplish more?
Yeah, I think he's fought better opponents. And even in his loss to Sugar Ray Leonard, that's a legendary loss compared to, the Canelo Alvarez fight.
Okay, but Jack, the other side of that is, in my opinion, and I think in yours, and most guys that we know who talk about this sport, who hold an opinion that we value, Golovkin was he was cheated out of the signature win of his career. And you could make a case definitely the first time, and the second time was very close also. Think about if he gets that decision, and he still wouldn't go ahead of Hagler because Hagler just happened to come along, Jack. Like you could say Ali, he came along at a time when there were better guys to fight, and it raised his level. But, Golovkin was cheated out of his signature win, and we really can't beat up on Golovkin because who was there around for him to fight? It wasn't like he ducked anybody.
Wait, Frank, you say he was cheated in the first Canelo fight. I'll disagree. I think he deserved the decision. I'm not arguing that with you. But when you open up the door to allow them to take it away from you and call it a draw, he opened up the door. He lost the last 3 rounds of that fight. Okay, he won 8 of the first 9. But you close the deal. We see it in sports all the time, Frank. Close the darn deal. And so many times teams don't do it in sports. Fighters don't.
We know how, but Canelo is a borderline all-time great. And it's not like Golovkin was going to just waltz through the fight and dominate him from start to finish. But the bottom line is Golovkin probably won 8 rounds of a 12-round fight without a doubt. And Jack, this is how I go when a decision is rendered. I go by how I felt at that moment when the decision was announced. And I remember where I was. I remember the couple of buddies I went with to watch the fight. And when that fight was declared a draw, and I agree, Canelo did win a couple of the last 2 of the last 3 rounds down the stretch. But when that fight was declared a draw, I just was there in shock. I wasn't in shock because it happened, but I just going through it at the moment. And it's like, because to me, it was overwhelming that Golovkin won the fight. You want to say it was close? Yes. But you know what, Jack? A 2010 or 2017 football game is close, but there's a definite winner. And if that, like you like to make cross comparisons, if that fight was a football game, it was 20-14 Golovkin.
Yeah, but I don't want to hear fighters. I'm getting tired of hearing fighters say they thought they were so far in front. They just wanted to, get through the final.
Well, I don't like that either. I don't like that.
I hate it. We heard that nonsense with Kenny Norton the last
first
round
person I thought of. Yep.
Ali. Come on. Did he really think he was so far in front? There was no thought that he wouldn't get the decision. Could you imagine Joe Frazier laid off Ali in the 15th round of their fight, thinking, I put such a beating on him. I thought I had the decision locked up.
Right.
I mean, come on.
But Jack, at the end of the day, though, you can always win 1 round at a time. And as you said, if Golovkin won 8 of the first 9, he can't lose 8 rounds in 4.
But we agree. Golovkin is a Hall of Famer because he's great. There's the great fighters in Hall of Fames, and there's the Hall of the Very Good. I think Antonio Tarver got in basically on the attitude he's the Hall of the Very Good. Antonio Tarver, if you look at his career.
I'm going back. I'm looking over his record now. Reggie Johnson, he beats Eric Harding.
And he lost to Harding too.
But they split.
So that he doesn't come out ahead, Frank, if he split.
No, I said that. I said they split, but he hasn't won over him. He beat Griffin. went 2-1 versus Jones, basically ended Jones's career. I think the fight that hurts Tarver in a big way was he was a pretty big favorite when he fought Bernard Hopkins, and Bernard Hopkins took him to school that night.
And didn't he fight Chad Dawson twice afterwards and got outpointed twice?
Lost a pair of decisions to Chad Dawson.
Yeah, I mean, is he a Hall of? I mean, I'm okay with Tarver getting in. You know, I'm okay with it, but you know, he was an Olympian too. I think he won a bronze medal, if I'm not mistaken, in the Olympics.
Yes.
No, I like to count the whole body of work. I like to count the amateur career as well to give the guy a little bit of a bump, but he's not a slam dunk.
I don't consider the amateur career as a pro, Jack.
Wait. If we want to count all the body of work, does Mason Dixon work for you at all? Just a tiny bit. He had that role.
No. How you doing, Little Holmes and Joe Bergman? But let me ask you this, Jack. I think Tarver could hang with the best light heavyweights in history. I don't think he beats many of the elite, but I don't think he gets embarrassed either. I think he hangs in there and makes it a fight. Maybe he matches up with a couple and some he doesn't, but it's like he's not an all-time great. See, I think that's where people get confused.
He's a threat. He's a threat to any light heavyweight. They got to be, they got to be in good form against Antonio Tarver because he's.
Does he beat Saad?
I think so.
You think Antonio Tarver would beat Saad?
No, let me tell you why. I'm not as high on Saad as you are. Okay, Saad based his reputation being Miracle Matt, pulling these fights out.
He made 9 title defenses in the rough era, Jack.
Yeah, but what great fighter did he come from behind with? Look, Yaki Lopez was a heck of a fighter, okay? But Saad wasn't going to beat Michael Spinks. He just wasn't. Mike Spinks was telling me a little story when Saad came to the gym and challenged him, showed up at Joe Frazier's gym, and they fought there, and he said he took, according to Michael, he took Saad to school, bloodied his nose, and all, but he wouldn't come back. Tarver was too solid to get overwhelmed like that.
I think Saad beats Tarver, Jack. Do you think Tarver beats Marvin Johnson or Eddie Gregory?
I think Gregory at his best would beat Tarver. Yeah, but I think it's a close fight. I think it's a nip and tuck fight.
Do you think that Tarver's automatic over Yaki Lopez?
Yeah. No one's automatic over Yaki. Yaki gives.
He only lost to the cream of the crop when he was good.
Right. I mean, Yaki would give
Connie Saad and Galendez.
I don't think Tarver beat. Well, Tarver may have outpointed Kawi. He had the range. If he boxed him, he may have. I don't know.
Not a chance in the world.
You don't think so?
No. The only light heavyweight that beats quality on his game is the guy that did. The guy you're writing a book about. That's it. Not Saad, not Johnson, not Tarver, not Galendez.
The
Cowie was a savage beast.
Yeah.
And if there was no Michael Spinks, he is the best light heavyweight of that era, and it was a deep era. And I'm sure Michael has told you just how formidable that guy was.
Yeah, well, you know from firsthand experience because you used to see him spar a lot at Joe Frazier's gym.
But Jack, aside from that, Quali was all that and then some when he was in shape.
When he was in shape, Cowie in top form beats Tarver in top form. But Cowie could be a little erratic, you would agree at times. He might not.
I would, Jack, but not so much at light heavyweight because you know what? I'll tell you why. Because Dwight did not make light heavyweight real easy. I remember seeing him way out of the gym. And what that means, guys, is after you've gone through training one day and sparring and you're running in the morning, you leave the gym at the lightest. You've sweat all the water out. You probably didn't eat that much that day. And Dwight weighed out of the gym constantly at 185. I don't know how he got those last couple downs and he weighed in at 175. But so for him to make 175, every time he made 175 was sort of like LaMotta. Like, if LaMotta made 160, he was in shape because most of his fights, he was 62, 63. Dwight was another guy that he could make light heavyweight, but it wasn't like it wasn't an effort. Like, he had to really work at it.
Yeah. I mean, getting to more recently, last Saturday, Lamont Roach and Isaac Pitbull Cruz fought to a draw. I guess that was the biggest fight this past weekend. And
Jack, don't say another word. Did you see it?
No.
Okay. I was at a Christmas party and I didn't see it. And I purposely didn't ask anybody else who holds an opinion that I value what they thought of the decision. I was saving that for you, and you didn't see it either?
No, I didn't get this pay-per-view one.
No, they wanted what? Joe, how much? Joe Bergman and I were talking. Joe, how much did they want for that? It was a lot of money. It was almost $70.
I mean, the PBC promoted it. They're not running that many shows anymore. But it didn't thrill me,
$75, Jack. Thanks, Joe.
I mean, to see O'Shaquie Foster fight Stephen Fulton, and to see Erislandy Lara against the substitute, and who cares, Jesus Ramos against Shane Mosley Jr. I mean, that's on my idea quite a pay-per-view.
The main fight was Roach and Pitbull.
That's a pay-per-view caliber fight. I mean, that should be and if it's a pay-per-view show, that shouldn't even be the chief support. That should be one of 4 fights, like, opening the show or something. But I
saw somebody say to Jack about Fulton that when he doesn't fight under PBC, he gets beat. He's had 2 big fights under PBC, and he lost both times.
Well, he lost to Inoue. You can't fault him for that.
Right.
But then to lose this fight, I don't know where he exactly goes from here. You know what's in the news, Frank, and I want your opinion on this. We haven't discussed it off the air. This controversy with Terence Crawford in the WBC. Now, normally a sanctioning body takes 3% of a fighter's purse. But and Crawford was getting $50 million for the Canelo fight. 3%.
Now, is that, Jack, is that etched in stone? Because I've seen where he said he only made 10. I was under the assumption he was getting 50. So what is the number?
I heard 50. I don't think.
Okay, so let's go by 50.
They don't get him to fight Canelo for 10 million because Canelo would have then had to get 50 million, and Canelo wouldn't have fought Crawford for 50 million. We both know Canelo would have only fought Crawford if they made him an offer that was so ridiculous he couldn't turn it down.
Right.
And reportedly Canelo got 150 million,
Right. That's been reported pretty consistently.
Right. And Crawford got 50 million. Crawford's always been a hard bargainer. But so normally would be 1.5 million, but the WBC was charging him something like 300,000, and Crawford refused to pay it. Now, I have mixed feelings on this whole matter, Frank, and I don't mean to cop out in any way, shape, or form. Mauricio Suleiman, the WBC president, who's a very nice guy, by the way. He's a very nice person, Mauricio. He said that this was the second fight in a row that Crawford refused to pay the sanctioning fee, so they're stripping Crawford of the title. Now, if a fighter doesn't pay the sanctioning fee, they're entitled to strip him. The way I look at it, you're not paying your dues, so you're not in the union, basically. And they only charged him. They didn't charge him the full 3%. They charged him something like 0.6%. And Crawford, he went on social media and he basically said, bleep you. He did say bleep you to the WBC. He put him down savagely. Who the bleep you think you are? Blah, 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 blah. You ain't getting a.
Well, I agree with him on that.
From me. But, okay, there's this school of thought. It was mentioned by Errol Spence.
I saw that.
Yeah, and Errol, it wasn't sour grapes by Errol.
No.
I don't think. He was just giving his opinion. So I don't want to hear, Errol be put down. Oh, well, because he lost to Crawford. That's why.
Right. He wasn't sour grapes. He was an adult in the way he handled it.
Yeah, he's saying not now that you don't need them, but beforehand you fought for their title. Why did you fight for their title? You should have told them before. I'm paraphrasing something to the effect that you shouldn't have fought for their title then beforehand. You should have let them know you're not paying the fee, so on. But once you're fighting for their title, you should give them, the money. And but my take on this is this, Frank, and I think you're going to agree with me. Crawford has entered the Sugar Ray Leonard territory, the Oscar De La Hoya
Yep.
territory. I could read your mind, where he's so big now,
He's
can
feeling his
do
oats.
things that other fighters can't. He wouldn't have done this before the Canelo fight.
No.
Even after the Spence fight, certainly not before the Spence fight. Now he's transcended his sport in a certain sense. And he can say screw you and call the shots. Other fighters
Jack.
can't, very few can.
Look, I think it's pretty well known by you and most of the people in our circle that I am a huge Terrence Crawford fan as far as the fighter goes. I've never met him. I don't know him, but I just think as a fighter, he's one of the greats. But he was also a belt whore, and we know how he was into collecting the belts. I'm sure he paid the fines back then. I think that he's feeling his oats. He's coming off the signature win of his career. He's probably the most talked about fighter in the sport right now. And he's in a position now, Jack, where he can go like that to him and say, I don't need you. I don't need your belt. The belt's about the fighter. So, as you said, I kind of have mixed feelings. I kind of like seeing him stick it to the commissions a little bit, because I have no love for the commissions, because to me, they do nothing really for the fighters, especially after their career. But, again, I have mixed feelings, and I don't believe Crawford would be saying this if Canelo beat him by decision.
I have a theory. Crawford's now fighting basically for Turkey, His Excellency. I can never pronounce his last name. Right.
I'm not calling him Excellency, Jack. He's Turkey.
They don't have any use for the sanctioning bodies. Turkey purchased Ring Magazine. They're only promoting the ring belt, the ring ratings, the ring this or that. So, I don't know whether he has Crawford's ear. Crawford understands that. But I will say this for the WBC, Mauricio Suleiman. They do a lot of charitable things. Lisa McClellan just came out with, a statement about all the WBC has done for, her brother, Gerald.
Really?
I know there was an old-time heavyweight. You might not remember his name. You would remember his name, of course. You're knowledgeable. Mark Young. He fought so many of the top guys.
He fought Tyson.
He got stopped in the round, lasted 7 rounds with Foreman, fought all the big names.
Yep. He was a journeyman.
Exactly. He told me a couple of years ago, I interviewed him, he had trouble hearing. He could hardly hear. And the WBC got him hearing aids. And now he hears much better.
Okay, Jack, I didn't know that. So I like hearing that story. I wish that somebody would cover that.
Okay, when I was BWA president, we had one of our banquets at the MGM in Las Vegas. And one of the honorees was Paul Williams after he was in that accident. He got partially paralyzed. I call up Mauricio Suleiman. I said, it'd be a really good idea if you present to him, but you present him a WBC green belt. And Mauricio was all on board, and he surprised Williams with the green belt. And the next day, it nearly brought tears to my eyes. There's a picture of Williams in his hotel room clutching the green belt like he's a little kitty, like he loved it, to bring him some happiness. And Mauricio does a lot of things, charitable gestures.
Well, Jack, it should be covered more, because I wasn't aware of all that. And thank you there, little Home 78.
Right. And that's what Mauricio was saying. A lot of the money, most of the money would be going to help fighters, in need, this and that. And Crawford doesn't want to. And when you think about Crawford too, if he's getting a $50 million and he's keeping most of that money after taxes, come on, $300,000, You know, his argument was, well, the IBF, WBO, WBA, they didn't ask for that much money. Who the bleep do you think you are? That was his attitude. So I kind of disagree with Crawford on this, but in fairness, and I'll condemn Mauricio for this, he says this is 2 fights in a row where Crawford didn't give the fee. Well, if Crawford didn't give the fee for the last fight, how could he expect
He's not going to give it right.
Exactly.
I imagine he can be a tough guy to deal with, Jack.
I didn't know that, Little Holmes. He gave, for George Chuvalo.
Crawford's feeling who he is, and like you said, he feels that he maybe he's Leonard and De La Hoya, not quite, although he's not as far as promotion wise. But as a fighter, he's greater than De La Hoya, and he's right there with Leonard. But he's feeling as though Jack, and he thinks who he is, and he'll probably fight Canelo again, which I said before the fight is the only legitimate fight for both of them, and then he probably goes away.
Wow. I didn't think of something, Frank. Canelo's a Mexican, and he's going to want the WBC title to be on the line. And that's going to be interesting. And if he's going to fight Crawford, I think, you know what I think might happen? Mauricio might say, well, if Canelo wins, he's WBC champion, but if Crawford wins, he's not. But if Crawford isn't the WBC champion anymore, that title wouldn't be on the line. It's like confusing.
But don't you think it means more to Canelo to even the score than to get that belt?
Exactly. Canelo has
it
nowhere
should
else
anyhow.
to go. But Canelo, we never even discussed like the potential of a rematch. Canelo has to fight Crawford again because it's the only fight that could motivate him. I don't think there's anything.
Yeah, we discussed it. Yes, exactly. We said that before the fight. He's not going to fight Benavidez, and Crawford's not going down to fight Boots or Janibek or anybody. It's like it's the smartest fight for both of them because if Crawford loses, he's 1-1. If Canelo loses, it's a decision. He can say, okay, I got beat by one of the all-time greats at the end of my career. It's not such a bad, it doesn't make me such a loser.
But when you think, Frank, negotiating purses, like Boots Ennis is supposed to fight Virgil Ortiz, I think Virgil Ortiz is going to hold out for a little more money. De La Hoya represents him. And would there be anything wrong with Virgil Ortiz getting more money? He has a more accomplished resume, I think, than Boots.
Who do you think the bigger name is, though? I think Boots is the bigger name.
Who would bring in bigger numbers? Virgil Ortiz would bring in a Hispanic, population. Boots Ennis wouldn't bring in, I don't think.
Hey, Jack, you just made me think of something. Do we have to see all of De La Hoya's tweets? And all his late night drunk tweets or whatever he's doing, it's like, I am really tired of seeing him and hearing some of the stuff he says. He's such a bitter guy and he's so partisan, it's not even funny. Like I heard him talking about, what did he say? Pacquiao would take Crawford apart. It's like, come on, Oscar, you don't believe that.
Wait. He don't say he doesn't believe it, Frank. I mean,
he doesn't believe it.
I'm not saying I agree with it, but there's validity in his opinion. It's not a crazy opinion. For example, there's this writer who wrote a book, a good writer, Mike Silver, The Arc of Boxing. Okay, and he talked about how superior the old timers were.
I read some of that book, Jack. I disagree with so much of what Mike Silver said.
Mike's a nice guy, knowledgeable guy, but I disagree. But when it got to the point where he said Tammy Mariello, the guy who got stopped in one round by Joe Louis.
With Joe Louis.
Would have beaten Lennox Lewis, Tammy Mariello, little Tammy Mariello.
I did not know he said that, Jack. And if he said that, that disqualifies his opinion.
I mean, exactly. When I heard that, I don't want to hear the comment that, well, it's a matter of opinion anymore. That's kind of ludicrous to that
Jack,
point.
Mike Silver is one of those guys that lived.
Saying the Pacquiao that beat Cotto would have beaten Crawford isn't
not
crazy,
a chance in the world, Jack. Not a chance in the world. Not a chance in the world. The Crawford that fought Spence against the Pacquiao that fought Cotto, No way Manny makes it to the decision. Manny is stopped, and maybe for the count. To me, Jack, they're different leagues. Pacquiao's great. He has speed. He's good. He has no tool, no weapon to dismay Crawford one bit, and Crawford could hurt him. And Manny is hittable, and he's been knocked out. Bad matchup for Crawford.
For Pacquiao, you mean?
For Pacquiao.
I would have picked Crawford in a hypothetical fight, the two of them at their best. Okay, I would have picked Crawford. So don't misunderstand me when I'm talking about Pacquiao like I'm saying Pacquiao would have won. I don't think he
Jack,
would
you
have.
just like to play devil's advocate and get me going. I know that.
I'm not playing devil's advocate for the sake of it. I mean, Manny would be in there with a chance. That's what I'm saying. You're giving him no shot at winning. I would give Manny
none. As good as he is, no chance.
Manny at his best. I
don't care. No chance. Crawford's never had an off night. Manny has no shot.
Chance. Crawford tends to give away rounds early in fights.
Yeah, hasn't hurt him one time.
It hasn't. But okay, listen, we both agree Crawford would have won that fight. But I'm not as
Jack. But you said something,
chances
and I just want to go back for 1 second. And I'm not even sure you're comfortable talking about it, but I have to clear the air. Did Mike Silver say, in all earnest, that Tammy Moriello would defeat Lennox Lewis?
I don't have it in front of me. I don't have the book anymore. I'm pretty sure that's what I read. And to validate it, I got into a conversation the other day with a famous boxing writer, and he brought up the topic that Mike Silver said Tammy Moriello would have beaten Lennox Lewis. And that's what I remembered, my recollection of reading that as well. Yeah. So the answer I'm virtually certain it was said. And why would the other writer mention it out of the clear blue?
Okay.
And I kind of remembered that.
Jack.
And also and also when he was giving a speech somewhere, like a book signing thing, I happened to show up. And I kind of objected to it. And I said, if Jim Corbett fought Mike Tyson, you mean to tell me who would you have picked? And he said he would have picked Jim Corbett to beat Mike Tyson. So,
Jack, it amazes me. And there's a couple other guys that have written books. I'm not going to mention their names, but we're talking about Mike Silver here. Jack, if Mike Silver really believes and has put his name next to it that Tammy Moriello could beat Lennox Lewis or Jim Corbett could beat Mike Tyson, he is crazy. And Little Holmes, I'm not sure what you're saying here. Look at McCall, 2 rounds, prime Lewis.
All right, Little Holmes backing up Mike Silver.
Let me tell you something.
Frank.
Do you know what McCall would have done to Tammy Moriello, who couldn't box, who had no defense, and he had no punch? Oliver McCall made a living standing in the kitchen with Mike Tyson and never got stunned one time. McCall is a big, strong guy who can really hit, and he caught Lewis. I don't think that has any validity at all. And all I'm going to say is this. If Mike Silver really said those things, and he means that, I have no time for his opinion when it comes to assessing fighters at all. Maybe he can tell me the dates and what color socks Joe Louis wore the night he fought Khan the first time. But as far as breaking down fights and assessing or dissecting a fight that happened, I have no time for his opinion. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no. He'd also mentioned with Hagler and Monzon, if they were fighting back in the day, I guess around the 1930s, they would have been rated, they just would have been contenders, not champions in the lower part of, I'm paraphrasing, the lower part of the top 10.
How does anyone take that serious? How do you take that serious? I just can't fathom that, Jack. That's a biased opinion that has no merit at all.
But you know who might back this up? Russell Peltz.
No way Russell would back up that Monzon or Hagler couldn't hang in the 30s. There's no way.
But they would be contenders, according to Silva. You know, they wouldn't be champions. They'd be contenders.
So Monzon and Hagler could not beat guys like Tony Zale. Who, and I forget, Jack, exactly who were the middleweight champs in the 30s?
Middleweight champion in the later part 40s? Of the 1940s. Yeah, late 40s. He lost to Marcel Sedan, the title, I think, 1949. The fight with Graziano, 47-49. You know, but it's what it is.
Little Holmes, you're right. Anybody can be stopped, but Oliver McCall is just not in anybody. Okay, Tammy Muriello was, and I don't want to say they were all bums. He was part of the Bum of the Month club. There's just nothing he brings to the ring to beat a guy.
Muriello fought Lewis. He fought Lewis late in Lewis's career. I think I might be mistaken, right before the first Jersey Joe Walcott fight.
Okay.
I mean, you got to look it up. And it was a one-round fight.
Well, Lewis had so many defenses, Jack. It is hard for me to keep up with it. I don't stay up on it like I used to, but it's an asinine statement. It's crazy.
But listen, since we're on,
could Tammy Muriello beat Henry Cooper? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I want to pick him because he's a paisan, Jack. But I don't think I would.
Maybe he could beat Brian London. I don't know. You know, guy
might be, and he could beat Jean-Pierre Koopman.
Yeah, definitely. But
I just can't believe Mike Silver said that. That's crazy. And to say a guy like Hagler, Monzon couldn't hang.
He's dug in with the old timers. I mean, you know, he feels the modern fighters just are completely lacking, that they're pathetic compared to the guys.
Yeah, Jack, he doesn't like anybody after 1960. I know that, except for maybe Ali and Duran. That's about it.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. I remember it was 1983, and I knew Mike Silver shortly before I got into the media, and he was in the media. He wrote for Ring Magazine, and I just happened to meet him. It was unrelated to boxing, you know, but we were talking boxing and we became friends. And he was telling me about the fighters at that time, 1983. He says, you want to know the reason why guys get cuts so much today? Because cuts were a problem back then. He said, because they don't know how to fight. He was telling me the guys in the 1980s. But now in 2025, I bet people will say, how great the guys were in the 80s. I heard that when I was a kid around the gyms, that the guys were bums, not like the fighters of the past. I mean, we hear that all
Jack,
the time.
Real quick. Middleweight champs in the 30s, okay? Gorilla Jones, Marcel Phil, Ben Jebby, Lou Brayard, Vince Dundee, Teddy Yaros, Freddie Steele, Al Hostek, Solly Krieger, Fred Apostoli, Seferino Garcia, and Ken Overland, okay? You're going to tell me those guys can beat Marvin Hagler or Carlos Monzon?
Hagler, Monzon walked through all of them, I'm pretty sure.
Jack, I hate that about boxing debates today, because you have the guys that they just think that everything was better about the old school, and then you have the guys that look at Mayweather and Usyk and think they walk on water, and there's no middle ground. Just like I saw somebody, they put a post up about Usyk, and somebody said, I forget who it was, but they picked somebody really nondescript, that if Usyk was fighting in that era, and it was a heavyweight from the 70s, that he would get killed by this guy. And it's like, Jack, it just never ends. We remember, we grew up in the Ali era. Today, everybody talks about how great the guys were they fought. I remember back then reading. Now, I'm not going to count Dick Young, because I know he didn't like Ali that much. But the Red Smiths of the world and Dave Anderson and some of those guys, they didn't think much of the opponents Ali was fighting. They said they're all bums. Nat Fleischer didn't give Frazier credit for beating Ali back then, and didn't think Frazier had much of a punch because he didn't knock Ali out.
Nat Fleischer was the worst of all of them, his favoritism of the old timers. It was ridiculous. I mean, when you look at things, Fleischer, he was living in the past, the turn of the last century. Greatest lightweight of all time, Joe Gans, he wouldn't move off that. Greatest middleweight, Stanley Ketchel. Greatest heavyweight, Jack Johnson. Even his heavyweight ratings, he had at number 10, Rocky Marciano. And you know what that meant, Frank? You can't put anyone else ahead of The Rock, because if you put anyone else in the top 10, you got to remove Marciano, and that was too unpopular. The opinion, he rated Sugar Ray Robinson as a middleweight only, and he rated him as the fifth greatest middleweight. Fifth.
I thought it was fourth.
But listen to this. Fleischer passed away in 1972. So forget about everyone that came after, like Monzon and Hagler, and Hopkins, etc. Let's forget about those guys for a moment. He rated from 1972. He was only the 5th best.
Jack, he rated Joe Louis number 4 in 1972. Jack. Go ahead. Was it 3 or 4?
I think Joe Louis was number 6. I think he had Jack Johnson number 1.
Jeffries number 2.
Bob Fitzsimmons number 3. Jack Dempsey number 4. Sam Langford number 5.
And then Joe Louis.
Number 6.
Jack, yeah. I remember it was in, I'm going to say it's like 1968. I remember being in my bedroom looking at Ring Magazine, and I think it was one of those articles, how would Ali do against the top 10 heavyweights? And they had the pictures of Corbett and Fitz and Johnson and so forth. And I remember sitting here thinking like, oh man, without knowing a thing about those guys, that these guys would have killed Ali. It's a good thing that they're not fighting today. It's like, that's the influence he had. And a lot of guys pick up that torch and they carried, like all the old guys are great. And the thing that makes me crazy, Jack, is anybody that's talking about that today was not alive to see any one of those guys' fights. And I have this argument all the time. There are 7 films of Jack Johnson on tape. And Jack, going by those 7 films, I see a guy that slaps, that holds and clutches. And I don't want to hear anybody tell me that Jack Johnson could beat Joe Frazier. But like they rate him so high. But when you look at the film, I just don't see it. And there are just some people that it's just like everything was better in the olden days. And I try to be one of those guys, Jack. I try to be objective, like with Usyk. I'm sure Russell doesn't think that he's as good as I do. Do I think Usyk would beat Foreman or Frazier or Ali or Lewis? No, but I think he'd give all of them one hell of a fight.
Yeah, I think that what you mentioned about Jack Johnson, if you look at boxing history, there are very few historical fighters. And I'm talking about historical to society, beyond boxing. Very few.
Well, Jack Johnson's one of them.
I'll give you an example. Sugar Ray Robinson wasn't a historical fighter outside of boxing. He was historical within the sports world. But the 3 of them who were historical outside of boxing, for sure, no particular order, Muhammad Ali, obviously, Joe Louis, I believe, and Jack Johnson.
Jack Johnson was the first black heavyweight champion.
Well, yeah, and everything, his whole story, and I mean, you can make an argument for maybe 1 or 2 more we could dig out, I'm sure. I don't see Jack Dempsey being historical fighter outside of boxing, even though he had tremendous popularity. And it's not about having popularity in society. I mean, really being historical as far as a contribution to society, either good, bad, or just being in the mix.
Okay, so you're saying, like Ali had the politics and the war. Johnson fought discrimination. And Joe Louis kind of had to deal with that somewhat to a degree.
Johnson didn't fight his discrimination, but his story, the Great White Hope and all.
Well, he was discriminated against to a degree. We know that.
But he's given too much credit. He beat Jim Jeffries, who was off for 6 years. And what gets me is Ali with 2 tune-up fights under his belt. He fights Joe Frazier, and he's age 29, and people are dismissing Frazier's victory. But Johnson beats a 35-year-old Jim Jeffries coming off a 6-year layoff, who's obviously shot. And he
Had to lose 110 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, but it's what it is. I'm a big believer in the modern athlete, Frank. I'm sorry. We disagree strongly. Even though I've never seen him fight, no one has. A guy like Harry Greb, you can rate him the greatest middleweight based on accomplishments. I'm not going to argue that. Accomplishments you could look up, you could research, all that. But any athlete, for the most part, in the 1920s, you put him head to head against the modern guys, they're going to be lacking. I argued this in baseball. Babe Ruth, if you brought him up to play today, he's not going to be as good as Ken Griffey Jr. He's just not. Ken Griffey, he's not going to have that athleticism and be that type of superstar. Can he be a heck of a player? Perhaps, with the work. But I've seen
Jack,
Babe
here's
Ruth
where I disagree.
Yeah.
I agree with, I'm going to say 80% of what you said, but I think it applies mostly to heavyweights. A middleweight in 1920 was 160 pounds, just like a middleweight in 2025 is 160 pounds. And I think Harry Greb, he beat 18 Hall of Famers, Jack. And you know what? He almost murdered Gene Tunney the first time they fought when he weighed 166 pounds. And if he could beat Gene Tunney up so bad that Tunney's family wanted him to retire and not fight again, I think that he would be okay at 160 against Hagler or Monzon. So I think in the lower weight divisions, Jack, I'm not sure evolution has evolved as much as some say. But in the heavyweight division, who's the heavyweight? Well, you can't use Usyk because he's the anomaly. But well, Tyson Fury was the best.
They'd be bigger.
Right. Tyson Fury was the champ.
I agree with
at 260. Ali never fought anybody 260 that could fight.
They would be bigger. Jack Dempsey, who would be a cruiserweight today, would be 20, 25 pounds heavier if he were around today.
Right.
You know, the same thing, Marciano. Marciano wouldn't weigh 187 if he was around.
Marciano was over 200, Jack, back in his day, but he was such a fitness nut, and he got tired, he said, when he was over 200 pounds, that he boiled himself down to 187. But Marciano could have carried 205 like Frazier.
They would know how to put weight on him, the nutritionist, while he'd be training. It's but you just compare it to other sports like Jesse Owens. He's not going to be able to compete with Usain Bolt. It just as an evolution.
But Jack, we have a reference there. We have a stopwatch that tells you he didn't go as fast.
But once in a while, you get an athlete who's ahead of his time. Sugar Ray Robinson was ahead of his time. He was 50, 100 years ahead of his time. Once in a while, you get an anomaly. And that was Sugar Ray Robinson. He was kind of an exception to the rule. I get the feeling Ezzard Charles was as well. Certain guys like Michael Jordan was ahead of his time, kind of.
Could Michael Jordan dominate today?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, listen, Muhammad Ali was ahead of his time. Yeah, Muhammad Ali today would be the best heavyweight in the world.
Jack, speaking of Ali, it's 55 years ago yesterday that he fought Oscar Bonavena in his second comeback fight. What do you remember? What do you remember about that? I'm trying to think. In 1970, I'm thinking I was about 12, so maybe you're like 15. So what was going through your head?
I didn't go to that fight. I started going to fights the year before the Garden, but I wasn't at that fight, and they didn't show it on live TV. So it was
closed circuit.
Right. I didn't see it on closed circuit.
I saw it at the Cherry Hill Arena.
Right, like the fight before against Jerry Quarry, I saw it on closed circuit, and I remember disappointment. It kind of punctured Ali's invincibility because Ali was considered invincible before the layoff, and when he stopped Quarry in 3 rounds, that image of invincibility was continuing. But the idea that Bonavena gave him such a tough time, he went all of a sudden to a decisive underdog against Frazier in a lot of people's views. Because, he had a hard time holding Bonavine off. And they imagined, how is he going to hold off Frazier? But Ali got the result. He stopped Bonavine in the 15th round, something Frazier couldn't do. I
think that hurt him, Jack.
Disappointed.
I think because, as you said, Frazier couldn't drop Bonavino one time in 25 rounds, and Ali basically finished him with that left hook that knocked him down the first time. He never recovered from that. I think that made Ali think that he was a little bit more of a puncher than he was. I also think that had a little bit to do with why he fought Frazier the way he did the first time. And, I think that messed him a little bit, but I remember that. Do you remember the phone call when after the fight that Cosell brought into the ring and Frazier had just beaten Foster and Cosell puts Ali and Frazier on the phone at the same time? Do you remember that? You couldn't hear what Frazier was saying, but Ali was talking. Goes, Joe, you're not afraid of me, are you? You're not afraid of what you saw tonight, are you? You don't really think you can whip me, but you never heard what Frazier was saying back.
No.
I'm one of the few Ali fans, Jack. I loved the way that Oscar Bonavina heckled him at the weigh-in, calling him Clay, calling him a chicken to fight for his country. I love seeing guys give Ali's ammunition back to him, like Terrell and like Oscar Bonavina did.
Well, with Terrell, it was like an accident. Terrell just happened to call him Clay inadvertently. And Ali was a very angry man at the time, very angry, and, went off. And once he called him Clay and Ali threatened Terrell to go back and say, I'll call you Muhammad Ali, would have been, in a sense, backing down. So Terrell was literally cornered, in that call.
Jack, do you remember the night before Ali fought Terrell on the Hollywood Palace? Terrell went on and he sang that song, Cassius. They changed your name. I'm going to change your features.
Yeah. I didn't see it live. I heard about it after. But
I didn't see it live at that time either, but I think it was great.
I know this sounds insane to say. Terrell was a great fighter that night. Ali was just much greater. Terrell would have beaten, so many guys that night. Terrell was outstanding. He was fighting against arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time at the top of his game. That's what Terrell was up against. Those jabs were barely missing. They were hard. They would have been so effective against anyone else. Terrell was flexible, and he actually hurt Ali a couple of times, people forget. Once to the body, once in the 7th round. Go back to the 7th round of that fight if you ever have a chance, Frank, if you don't remember. Terrell's in bad shape. Ali's looking to finish him. Late in the round, Terrell throws his big overhand right that actually hurts Ali and has him holding on. And I remember listening on the radio, the announcer saying, Clay is hurt. Clay is holding on. It was temporary, of course. But, it wasn't close to being stopped. And Terrell got a bad knock, for that fight, the image and everything. But Ali did win 13.
You think that was Ali at his best?
Yeah. Yeah, Cleveland Williams, I think, was a shot fighter. I think Ali beat a great fighter in Terrell, and it showed Ali's greatness. But Ali robbed himself of the virtuoso performance of his career, arguably, with the antics, the what's my name stuff.
So Ali fights Terrell 4 months after he fights
we got
William,
about a minute left. You wrap it
and
up,
then he
Frank.
fights Foley 6 weeks later. So you think that was Ali's prime?
Yeah.
Does that Ali beat March 8th, Joe Frazier?
I believe so, yeah. Tough fight, close fight, I think. So you don't. I know you don't. But we could pick this up next week again.
We'll forget about it, Jack, and we'll miss it. But yeah, I don't think that he does. I don't think so. If Chuvalo could get Ali to the ropes in the corners in 66,
close on this,
Frazier
Frank.
can get him.
If the Dolphins win next week, I want to hear you be a believer. That's all I'm going to say. And good night, everyone.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Good night.